Hello, I'm BakedBreens, and in this devlog today, I'll be going over all of the stuff in my game to do with ascensions. Ascension points, how the code behind them all functions, and the ascension tree. So without further ado, let's get straight into it. So if we boot up the game, it appears that nothing has actually changed. However, if we increase our score, you can see this meter up at the top, the ascension meter. Basically, what it does is very simply, it tracks your score, and if it reaches a certain threshold, it'll give you 1 ascension point. Then, looping on from there, it increases the threshold and you have to reach that to get another ascension point. Ascension points are basically another mechanic that will improve the amount of time that you can play and the height of numbers that you can reach in this game, whilst not changing too much on a fundamental level. This is just one more thing to make the game a bit more interesting and a lot more valuable to the player themselves. So if we actually get to a point where we can ascend, you can see that we've got 3 ascension points. That's because I reached the ascension threshold 3 times. Now, with these ascension points, what I can actually do is ascend with them and gain 3 ascension points. This resets everything in my game. You can't really see it here, so if I restart the game again, increase my score, and buy a load of different upgrades, you can see that all of these values are different. You can see that there's an idle value now. Now when we ascend, it resets everything, puts the idle score back to 0, puts your score back to 0, and basically gives you a fresh slate with your ascension points. But what do the ascension points actually do? Well, each 1 ascension point gives you a 0.1% increase to your idle score. So you get 1,000 of them and you get to double your idle score. It's not much, however it does stack incredibly quickly, and you'll be able to scale even faster with the ascension tree. Now the ascension tree doesn't have anything special to it just yet, however there are core mechanics that will play here that are incredibly important. Basically, when it comes to the ascension tree, you have different buttons that will give you different upgrades, but you have to buy them with ascension points. These are just another currency. Also, don't worry, you will keep your maximum amount of ascension points as your bonus, so you won't have to lose your multiplier to buy things. Just another handy quality of life that will just mean that the game is a bit easier and a bit nicer for people that are playing it. So far, we only have 2 current upgrades that you can buy in the ascension tree. A basic multiplier that increases all your total game by 2, and a multiplier that gives you power of a 1.1 on all of your idle vine scores. While these might not seem very strong on their own, once you get into the later game and start becoming more resource aware and everything starts costing a whole lot more, you'll be able to find that these upgrades actually allow you to continue progressing through the game at a decent rate, whilst making sure that you still have a lot of stuff to do and eventually will be a lot of stuff to micromanage. So coming out of this tree now, we can go back into the game itself and look at the code for what's going on here. If we go over here to where you actually ascend, this is all the code for it. There isn't all that much. We'll zoom out here so you can see the entirety of it. See, only about 30 lines of code, if that. Scroll back in. You can see that the progress bar, if I make it visible, the progress bar up here, the value of that will update based on the world score. Then, if the world score is greater than the starting value and it's not visible, it'll become visible. If the world score is equal to the starting value, which is basically the threshold that you need to get an ascension point, it'll run this function over here, apply ascend, and then change the text on one of the buttons to ask if you'd like to ascend now and display the amount of ascension points you'd be getting. Otherwise, if you can't, it'll say that you can't ascend yet and give you the amount of score that you need to get until you can ascend. This little informational bit is quite nice as it allows the player to get a good gauge of where they are and how close they are, and it leaves the player not guessing for what they're going to be doing next. Then in the apply ascend function that is called here, it changes the minimum value on the progress bar, increases your ascension point, and then multiplies the threshold by 1.15 to the power of the amount of ascension points that you currently have. I actually should change this over to the maximum amount of ascension points that you currently have, but I'll do that off camera. And then it increases the max value to the new starting value, so that you actually have a good point of reference to go on further in terms of the progress bar's minimum and maximum values. Then, when this button is pressed, I say, and you're able to ascend, it'll finalize the amount of ascension points that you have and transfer that data to the world. So over here in the world, you can see up here, it's got max ascension points. These max ascension points are used over here as a global multiplier for all of your idle score. Divided by 100 just means that they're not incredibly overpowered and create a huge increase. Then all the way down here is the humongous function called function reset, and this essentially resets everything in the game. Resets the amount of different upgrades that you have, resets all of your multipliers and all the score, essentially putting everything back to 0, giving you a clean slate. However, you keep your maximum ascension points. Oh yeah, and it also resets the current amount of ascension points you have in the ascension script. So that's how you get ascension points and how it all works. But how does the ascension tree work? If we go over here and make it visible, you can see that it is an entirely new separate thing. Essentially, you have the tree here. No icons for it just yet because I didn't have time to make them, but each different button has its own corresponding upgrade with all of these different names to them. They all do have their own effects. So ×2 mult gives everything a double multiplier, increased storage makes your idle stronger, PC users improves your click, better upgrades means the upgrades are cheaper and more effective, cheaper items reduce the price of upgrades, and so on and so on. However, because I want this tree to be incredibly big and stretch on for a good portion of the game, I made this menu down here to confirm whether you want to use an upgrade. So A, you can see what the upgrade does and the name isn't confusing, and B, that you're able to confirm whether you want to actually use your ascension points or not on them, and you can plan out what you're going to do. The confirm menu is incredibly simple script. It comprises of just a confirm button and a node, sprite, label, and a close menu. Basically, what it does is when you click on any of the buttons, so for example, the 2x mult here, it sends out a signal to the parent node over here, the ascension tree script, gets which button was pressed. So on here, the 2x button was pressed. The confirm menu, it becomes visible, and the current value is set to a string of 2x. Confirm menu reads this, and it says that if it's 2x, the label text will update, telling you what it does and how much it costs. And then if the confirm button is pressed, it checks if it's still 2x and you have enough ascension points to actually buy the upgrade. It'll apply the upgrade and then take away the points. An incredibly simple and incredibly effective system to work the ascension points in their game. So the plan for this is that the ascension tree will essentially run throughout the entire game, all the way into the late game, still providing upgrades and powerful tools essentially to the player to keep them engaged and keep them climbing higher. And finally, one final thing that I forgot to mention is the scientific notation for the game. So when you're getting into incredibly high numbers, if I close this, when you get into incredibly high numbers, you'll see that the game puts the views in a scientific notion. Basically, scientific notion is just shortening the number down while still keeping the value of it the same, and makes it more readable for the player. So if this was a full number right now, it would be 1,000,000,000, and that looks incredibly long on the screen. And whilst that is quite fun to see, when you get into later games and you're dealing with octillions, nonillions, decillions, and creating numbers that are incredibly long, you don't want that to be hogging up all of the screen space so the player can't see, and potentially the label even going off screen so you don't know what's going on and what your total score is. So that's why scientific notation is used. So you're able to shorten down the number visually, whilst still keeping the score the same and still informing the player of what their current score is and what they can and can't buy. Eventually, this same script will be used on the upgrades for when they get into high enough numbers, over here on the ascension points when it gets into high enough numbers, and yeah, also on the upgrades over here. But with that, I'm pretty sure that that is everything for the game actually covered. That was day 4 of the devlog. If you've been enjoying watching the game's progress, then make sure you show your support, share this video with people, like and subscribe if you want to, or leave a comment to see, or to tell me what you want to see come next up in the game. But with that, I've been your host, BakedBreens. You've been a great listener, and this has been day 4 of my 1-week coding challenge.